I think it's safe now. Okay, this is Fran Lewis, I think, and this is MJ Network on Restream, and this is the eighth stream that I'm doing. And I have to tell you, last week I got 120 views on my stream with DP Lyle. So I'm going to
Fantastic.
get more today, I'm sure.
Okay, let's hope so.
So Tess Gerrington is here, and Summer Guest is here. This book is great. When former spy Maggie Bird retired to the seaside hamlet of Purity, Maine, she settled in for a quiet life, breathtaking views. But enemies from the past soon threatened to destroy everything. She survived thanks to her wit and the collective intelligence, I love this, of the Martini Club, the circle of ex-CIA agents in our cocktail sipping book club. What I really love is the fact that these are not young people, they're older people.
That's right. And I couldn't have written this book 35 years ago. I feel like I needed to be a little older to really understand exactly what it feels like to be, I guess, to be discounted, to be older and have people not look at you in the same way anymore. So, in a way, it's a really good age to be a spy. Nobody notices you and you become invisible.
You know what
And
I
that's,
love about it is that
yeah,
when I call somebody, I don't tell them how old I am because I really don't know and I really don't care. And they start to say, "Oh, do you understand?" They talk to you like you're a bag of wind.
yeah.
And I go, "Oh, you should hear the mouth's voice." Excuse me, but I'm the host of a radio show that's all over the world. Eat your heart out.
Right, I
So
know. And we are discounted by young people because, maybe we're not as tech savvy
we're
as they
smarter
are.
than them too.
Yeah, but we
Trust
have
me.
we have institutional wisdom. We know how things used to be, and we can use that, to make good decisions.
This is true because my nephew texts me every 10 minutes to tell me what he should do before he does it because the parents forget it. The aunt knows. So, how did you create the first scene and leaving us wondering how to connect the past to the present? And then chapter two brings in the Martini Club. I love them. They're so cool.
Yeah, well, the book, The Summer Guest, starts off
Yeah.
with I would say, almost a prologue that takes place decades earlier before the actual story starts. And it is based on something that I really found out about my hometown.
Oh
Now,
wow.
yes, I live in a town where there really are retired spies. We have a lot of them up here. I can go into the reasons why they settled here, but we do have a lot. And one of the reasons these spies, some of the reasons that these spies came up here was because the CIA had a bit of a research station in my
Mm.
town, and it had to do with an operation called MK Ultra. Now, I'm sure a lot of your viewers and listeners do not have any idea what I'm talking about. It sounds like a
Probably.
superhero. But MK Ultra was a program that the CIA was running between the 50s and the 70s. It had to do with giving people psychogenic drugs to see what their results are. The
Mm.
idea was that perhaps they could use them in interrogations, or, and this is crazy, back in
Mm.
those days, they believed in ESP. They believed that we might be able to do remote viewing as
Mm.
spies, and maybe these drugs would help our ESP abilities. So, anyway, it all fell apart when there was a death. They gave LSD to one of their own agents. He jumped out of a window, a 10th floor window, and died. It all came into the open what this program was because a lot of the subjects were unaware they were being given this drug.
Mm.
There were congressional hearings. The whole program got shut down. The head of the CIA destroyed all the records. And I found out about this and thought, there's a story here. And so that opening scene, it's really a horrific scene in a very small, sweet little town. Something terrible happens, and that was based on that information I had about MK Ultra.
I heard about that, but I also, it was funny, I took a class in college, and one of my professors said, "How do you know things before they happen?" I go, "I don't know anything," but they tested me for ESP.
Ah, yeah.
And I was like, why, out of all the 500,000 students in Hunter College, did you pick me? And they said I had a touch of something. And I
Uh-huh.
said, that's very nice.
Do you
I
still
said,
have it? Do you still have it? Tell
my
us about the.
my husband says I have an intuition. It's frightening. And sometimes, you say to yourself, I really should call somebody. I haven't heard from them in a while. And then when you call them, you're sorry you did because you find out all the information.
Yeah, yeah.
So at the end of chapter two, you get an uneasy feeling. And tell us about George Conover and why his family is at Moonview. And at the end, I wonder who wants to go there.
Okay, well, it's a beautiful town, all right. Everybody
Yeah.
wants to come to Maine in the summer, but we have an issue here, and I think it's probably true for every resort town in the world. There
Mm.
are the people who live there, and then there are people that come in, the tourists, the itinerants, and there's also a divide between people who have a lot of money and people who don't. So the Conover family has been coming to the town
Mm.
of Purity for
Yeah.
decades. They have a summer home on this beautiful pond, and they're back. But this time they're back to scatter the ashes of the father in the family, and they bring along the whole family. They're grown, they're adult children. And there is a new granddaughter. She's just come into the family. She's 14. She is 15, I think.
Yeah.
And she goes missing. So
Mm.
this is all really about this family, this summer family. The girl's gone missing. It becomes like an investigation, and the problem is the number one suspect in this girl's disappearance is
Mm-hmm.
the next door neighbor to my heroine, Maggie Bird. And that's what brings the Martini Club into the whole mystery because now he's being accused, he might be arrested. Maggie's friends believe he's innocent and they want to
Mm.
investigate.
What's really scary is that those things are happening right now.
Yeah.
I get all these emails that say so and so is missing, so and so, you have to help them find them. Must
Mm-hmm.
be a reason why these teenagers are missing or they're running away.
Well, that is one of the multiple possibilities that she ran
Yeah,
away. Maybe she met somebody online and she's off with him, or she got kidnapped, or she
yeah,
had accidental death. And because they live on a pond, that's the first thing they begin to think about. She drowned because she's swimming. She's a big swimmer. Um, and when they drag the pond
yeah.
looking at the girl's body, they come up with a complete surprise. They don't find the girl, but they find the skeleton of a woman who has clearly been dead for decades. And now we add another layer of mystery to this because we not only have a missing teenager, we have
Yeah,
a dead woman. And who is she?
that's even scarier. So tell us about Zoe and who was Hannah Green. I wasn't sure about her.
Zoe. Yes,
Zoe.
Zoe is the girl. She's the teenage girl. Her mother is was a widow or was a widow, and then she married into the wealthy Conover family. So here she is. She's new to the family. Her mother's new to the family, and they don't really know the Conovers very well. They feel a little uneasy with them because
Mm.
they're rich and they're kind of standoffish. One thing Zoe has, and she's passionate about, is she swims. They call her the mermaid in the family. So she is
Mm-hmm.
obviously swimming in this pond constantly. And when she goes missing, her mother just cannot believe her daughter drowned because this girl is such a good swimmer.
Yeah,
Um, and she's a wonderful girl. She and her mom, because they bonded after the father died, they have such a strong connection, and she can't believe her daughter would run away. She can't believe her daughter would do anything wrong because this girl has always been a straight arrow, sweet, and she loves her mother. So that's Zoe for you. She is what I would say the sweet mermaid in the family.
yeah, that's scary. So we have Hannah Green, and where was Zoe and her new friend? What happens that makes Susan worried? Because
But
Susan, when they accuse her, I go like, she wouldn't do that. And
yeah,
Zoe is so like me, perfect, never did the wrong thing and never gets in trouble,
yeah. Well,
ever.
Susan is her mother, and Susan
Yeah,
you know what? I wanted to feel like Susan was every woman. She is every parent who's ever had her kid
yeah,
not show up for dinner. She's frantic, and she can't understand why the rest of her family is so lackadaisical.
Yeah.
Here's Susan having a nervous breakdown because Zoe hasn't come home for dinner.
That's
Um,
scary.
Susan's husband, who is the son of this family, is also very worried. I mean, they're like a normal couple, and the rest of the family is going, "Oh, it's Maine. Kids are out all the time playing. She met some new friends. Don't worry about it." It's getting later and later and later, and finally, Susan can't stand it anymore. She calls the police, and the family's not particularly. They're still not worried, but now the police are involved, and somehow that weirds out the family. The family is uncomfortable around police officers, and Susan wonders why.
They don't actually take it too seriously. Now, a
No,
parent,
they
they
don't take it
don't.
seriously at all
A lot,
until
and even
until
today, they don't take it seriously. I mean, if a
yeah.
parent is telling you my child wouldn't do that, then give them the courtesy of trying to find them.
Right, right. And the police, and
They
so
don't.
here comes Joe Thibodeau. She's the chief of police. She was introduced in the first book, and she has to investigate. And
Yeah,
she doesn't like this family either because they are very rich and dismissive of this local cop. But she takes the mother seriously. Yes, something bad has happened. And Joe Thibodeau, who is in her mid-30s, a very good cop, but doesn't have all the smarts that the Martini Club has, um, immediately jumps to the conclusion either she's drowned or she's been kidnapped.
yeah,
And that idea that she's been kidnapped becomes much more likely when they find Zoe's
yeah.
backpack lying at the side of the road.
Now, a character I'm not sure about is Elizabeth.
The
Yeah,
matriarch of the family. She's
yeah, Elizabeth. She runs the family like my mother did.
oh gosh, I feel
Yeah,
sorry.
oh, you have no idea. Perfection is the only thing that she accepted. And if I got less than 100 on the test, if it was 99.9, I had to write it over the whole test.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that's
it
you
was
know what?
tough. Even the way I looked and went to school one day, she called my principal and told her she didn't like what I was wearing. So when I
Oh
got to
no!
school, I went to school. My principal said, "If your mother didn't like it, you're my assistant to the assistant. I wouldn't like it either." I
Oh
go,
my
"Thanks,
gosh!
ma."
Oh
so
gosh, that's terrible.
So who is Elizabeth, and how come everybody had to listen to her? Or
Well,
she thought
Elizabeth
they did.
is the grand matriarch of this family. She is in
Yeah,
her 80s. She's still sharp as a tack and very powerful. And whatever she says goes. So here we are, this rich summer family. Their step granddaughter has gone missing, and Elizabeth Conover is saying, "I think it is that local guy over there who looks like a Bigfoot, and he was the last person to see Zoe.
mm,
He must have done something to her." So she's demanding the police arrest Maggie's neighbor, who does look like Bigfoot. um, so she's trying to run the show, and there's this tug of war between Elizabeth and Joe Thibodeau, the cop. So it's rich versus poor. It's person from away versus somebody who's local, and that sets up a whole new set of conflicts that is going to embroil the whole community.
yeah. Well, all I know is that money talks, unfortunately, as you could tell on the news.
Yes,
And
money
yeah, and
talks.
all this supposed power that children, that adults that act like 2 year olds have too, so they can get away with everything. So nobody wants to believe it. So now we get to the good part. How and why does Maggie get involved, and where do they look for evidence? What I really like, they're smarter than everybody.
Well, all right.
That
So
makes me so good.
Maggie gets a knock on the door. It's her next door neighbor, Luther, who's an interesting character. He is a farmer as well. See, Maggie has a chicken farm,
I
and
like
next
him.
door is Luther Yount with his granddaughter, and they have a farm. So in the late at night, he comes knocking at her door and he goes, "Maggie, I'm in trouble. I think the police believe I kidnapped Zoe."
Yeah,
Because he gave her a ride back to the pond, and he was the last person to see her. She was in his truck. He's a scary looking guy, and he can't really account for his whereabouts after he dropped her off
yeah,
because he has a secret too. Everybody in this town has secrets, and he asks Maggie and her friends to please help prove that he's innocent. So that's what pulls the Martini Club in. Maggie has four friends. They're all five of these people are retired CIA.
yeah.
They're living the nice, quiet life in this little sweet town in Maine. and now they're needed.
That's scary. So the clan goes in the water, and what does he find? And how does this affect the investigation when they find out not what is buried in the water? That's
Yeah,
probably why they
well,
don't go in the water.
the state of Maine has they
Yeah,
have their own team that does dives into fresh water to look for bodies, and unfortunately, it happens often enough that we have a very skillful team here.
yeah,
So they are deployed. They search the pond, thinking they're going to find little Zoe's body, and they do find something.
yeah.
Uh, at first, you don't know what it is, but everybody can see they brought up a body bag. And Susan, the girl's mother, is frantic. She thinks it's her little girl. So she kind of ambushes the dive team as they get to shore, and she opens up the bag herself. And it's not her daughter, it's a bunch of bones. And we will
That's
find out later
scary.
that these bones are of a young woman, that there are indications that she's been in there a long time. And here's where her dentition becomes really important. We find out she's had fillings that can date about what decade she might have died. So that becomes a complication. Who is this dead woman? They don't even know her name. There is no report of a missing woman. So now Joe Thibodeau, my local police chief, has two mysteries to solve: the dead woman and the missing girl.
Well, they have missing bones recently in the news too. They have all this
They're
stuff.
found all over. Oh, they're found all the time.
I get the weirdest emails. I go like, why are you telling me this? It's not my problem. It's really weird. So who is Ethan and how is Joe received by the person investigating the disappearance? And Elizabeth is not happy about it, is she?
Well,
Poor
Ethan is
Elizabeth.
Ethan
Too
is
bad.
this yeah, Ethan is Susan's new husband and Zoe's stepfather.
Yeah.
Um, he's a writer, and I don't usually write about writers, but he is a writer struggling with second book syndrome. And every writer who I've ever talked to understands what I'm talking about. The first book, yeah, you do it, and the second book is hard. So he's struggling. He's with his family. He and his family have not gotten along for a long time because
Yeah.
Ethan's kind of like the kid who didn't do as well as the older brother. Um, so he resents his mother as well. And unfortunately, Ethan was not really paying attention when Zoe came to him and said, "I'm going to go visit this girl on a farm, and I'll see you later, Dad." And so Ethan's busy working on his book, and when
Yeah.
Zoe goes missing, he feels very, very guilty. And in a way, Susan blames him for not paying attention. Who did she go off with? Did you get a name at least? So this is another source of conflict between him and his new wife, that he feels responsible for his stepdaughter, disappearing as well.
Well, at least that kid cares. A lot of people
Yeah,
don't.
he cares desperately, and he loves his family. And so, but there's still always a question. It's always the stepfather. When a teenage girl goes missing, you got to think about whether he was abusive or not.
A lot of step parents are different. So who is? I love Callie. I love Callie. So this is the Martini. How and why does she realize that Zoe is in trouble? Because she doesn't believe for just that she ran away or that something. So she has her own speculation. And what was that? How did you figure that out? Because there's always somebody that's plugged in, and that's her.
Well, yes. So next door neighbor Luther Yount, who is the primary suspect,
Yeah,
is living with his granddaughter. He has a 14-year-old girl named Callie, and she and Zoe met at the pond, so they're kind of like fresh new friends.
yeah,
And Zoe and Callie kind of bonded in a couple of hours that they were hanging out at the
yeah,
farm. And Callie says Zoe wouldn't run away. She's happy. She loves her parents. She loves that house on the pond. She
yeah.
was looking forward to spending the summer there. She did not run away. So Callie really feels that Zoe has been kidnapped, and she tells Maggie. And so really everybody is operating on the idea that Zoe has been kidnapped and probably carried in a car, in her kidnapper's car, and is out of state by now, and they will never find her.
Well, we have Luther. And Luther is questioned by Joe, and they lock him up. So
Yeah.
sometimes the police get a suspect that really isn't the person, but they don't care. But they could say they solved the case.
Well, he's a pretty good looking. I mean, he looks like a good suspect. He was the
Yeah,
last person to see her. She was in his truck, and here's
that's
the
very,
they find blood in his truck. And Lucy keeps saying, "Oh, look, I'm a farmer. I haul meat all the time. It's probably animal blood, but no, it's human blood." And eventually, they're going to find out that it matches the missing girl. So now Luther becomes a really good suspect, and
yeah.
he cannot really account for his whereabouts, and he's reluctant to say where he was, and that's another mystery. What is Luther hiding? And Maggie and her friends are going to have to figure out that mystery as well to really exonerate her neighbor.
Now something else happens. The clan proceeds, but the hardest thing is that they didn't really want it in the papers. So what happens when they report it in the papers? So now they need to investigate, and what about Zoe, without saying what it is, plays a major part in how they try to find her.
Yeah, I have, you know what? You're talking about a book that I wrote 2 years ago, so I'm really thinking about
It's it's
all,
it's
all these very, very complicated little
I'm
twists
getting
and
good at
turns.
this.
Well, okay, let's go back to the woman who was in the pond. Who is she? And it
Yeah.
turns out that her identity is very much um, very much tied into what happened to Zoe. And there is something else that happened years before. Yes, a woman was on the pond. I can't remember, back in the 70s, and she has not been seen since. And her disappearance was briefly mentioned in the local newspaper, but then no follow up has been done. And when the stepgirls, when Zoe's mother goes searching into the newspaper archives, she finds mention of it. And now there's another thread. Now we have to find who this missing woman was, because clearly it has something to do with the pond where they're all living on. It's called Maiden Pond. Things have happened bad and on that pond. And it's called Maiden Pond because a century before, a girl drowned in that pond. So now we have like two deaths in that pond. Is it haunted? What is happening in this little community?
This is scary. Now Joe goes to the bedroom to search, and who's Brooke? Who is Brooke?
Oh, Brooke. Okay, Brooke is her
I'm not sure
sister-in-law.
about that one either.
Brooke is her sister-in-law. So the family, the
Yeah.
Conover family, consists of Elizabeth, who is the matriarch, and then she has two sons, and she has a daughter-in-law, Brooke. There's
Uh-huh.
another grandchild in the house. I mean, it is a full house. And Brooke is the wife of the older son.
Mm.
And they're all, they have their personalities, they have their quirks, they have their conflicts. Um, and she is the beautiful, blonde, perfect daughter-in-law. And she's trying to be sympathetic with Susan. She understands what it's like to be scared about your child because she has a son herself, and it's clear that she and her son are very close. So that's the whole family that lives in this house.
This is scary. Now, what do the game wardens find, and who's Finn? And how does he help with the bones? I liked him.
Yes, so the game
Everybody
board
gets caught up in this.
in the state of Maine, the people who are responsible for
Yeah,
diving in freshwater is
yeah.
the Maine Warden Service, and Finn is one of the divers. And Finn is also Joe Thibodeau's brother, so it's like brother and sister. They both work in law enforcement in a way. They're very close. Joe and her brother, they grew up hiking and camping and hunting, and she and her brother are like that, just like they're really close to their widowed father. um, and when Finn is the one who pulls up the body, he's the one who also is asked to go attend the medical examiner's examination of these bones. And I love Finn as well. He's a bachelor. He's terrified around young women. He can't talk to them. So that's why he's still unmarried. And from Joe's point of view, her brother is just a good egg. Even though he's so skinny, she envies him. She envies her brother because he can eat anything and he never gets fat. So Finn is standing there at the autopsy room, and here's an autopsy room where we see not only the medical examiner, we also see a forensic anthropologist because these bones are so old, and the state police detective is there, he's never gotten along with Joe. So we have some conflict there as well. But what's discovered in the autopsy or in the examination of
Yeah.
the bones is an estimate of age. They think could be somewhere around 50 years. And it's very clear based on the fracture in the skull that this was a murder case. It was a young woman somewhere in her, 20s to 30s.
Yeah, it's sad.
Uh, there is nylon rope, which means that her body was probably weighed down. And that's why it never appeared, that's why nobody has found it before. But they still don't know who she is.
Now, one of my favorite characters who we get to know later on. Well, Ethan wrote a novel, and Susan's not thrilled. And then, who is Reuben talking, and why does he decide to leave the Conover family? As a matter of fact, there are a lot of people that want to leave the Conover family.
Yeah, Ruben is another character, a local character. He's a really kind of a sad story. He and his crippled sister live in a very poor little house that's also on the pond, but on the other side, on the swampy, mosquito-ridden poor side of the pond.
Mm,
He has had conflicts with the Conover family since he was 12 years old. And now
yeah,
he's in his 60s and he still hates the family. So again, it's rich against poor, but Ethan has taken it, excuse me, Reuben has taken it a step further. He, in his boyhood, would do things like punch holes in the Conover's canoes. He would leave dead animals on their porch. He's had a lifelong feud with the Conover, but we don't really know why. And the reason for that feud becomes one of the ways this mystery all gets untangled. What does Reuben have against the Conovers?
yeah. Now, who is Vivian? And how does Maggie learn about her? And that relates all the way to the past. Now, you got to
Yes.
admit that Maggie is that club is really brilliant. You don't want to get them angry because once they start looking, until they get what they want, they're not going to stop.
Well, okay. This is a little bit of a spoiler, but Vivian
Oh,
is
okay, we can leave it out then.
all right. But it has to do with the identity of the dead woman in the pond and
Well, we're not going to
what she
say
had to do with the Conover family. Yeah.
who is Farley, and what does he have to do with poor Zoe? There's too many people that are after Zoe.
Okay. Well,
I like
Farley.
Zoe.
Yes, yes. Farley is one of the suspects. He is
Yeah,
a thief. He is a miscreant. Joe knows him from high school. He's always been a problem. And again, he becomes also one of the suspects in Zoe's disappearance because somehow he ended up with Zoe's cell phone and
yeah, in the
he can't
trunk.
explain it. He claims he found it. Um, so yeah, that's another kind of an alleyway that Joe is going to follow to find out where did Zoe go, because they still don't know where she is. And did Farley, this drunk guy living in the woods, did he take her? So anyway, we're talking about the locals. Every
Yeah,
suspect so far has been a local.
that's so cool though. Now, who is Abigail and what's her relationship with Reuben? And where do they find a pill press? A lot of people that have those.
Yeah, well, Abigail is Reuben's sister. Um,
Yeah,
he has been taking care of her all his life. She
yeah.
was she was born with a
I know
abnormality
that's sad.
mind. Yeah, so she's in a wheelchair. And it goes back to what kind of a person Reuben is. He's a kind person. He loves his sister. He's been taking care of his family for decades. He's never been able to hold down a job because his sister needs care morning, noon, and night.
Yeah,
It's really kind of a sad pair. Neither one of them has gotten married. It's just the bachelor brother and the spinster sister. And now they've been hit by another blow. Abigail has a fatal illness. So she is going to be the one to tell the police, no, he couldn't have killed Zoe. My brother couldn't have killed Zoe because he was taking me to the hospital. So again, we look at this Tarkin family, the poor family across the pond, and we see the rich um, family with Elizabeth Conover. What do they have? What is their relationship, and what is it in the past that has caused this lifelong
It's
feud?
horrible. Now, do they find her? Do they ever find her?
I am not going to say
We're not
because
going to say
you
because
know
it's
what,
really
Fran?
sad. No.
Now we've reached
So,
spoiler
do they ever figure
territory.
out what happened to her?
We go any further and we're going to hit spoilers. So I
No, we
really
can't tell
don't
them.
want to go much further, but I can talk a little bit about some of the history of the CIA in Maine and how I came to write this story. I think we talked about the Spy Coast, didn't we, 2 years
Yeah,
ago? And I may have mentioned how this all came about, how the story came about. Um,
it's scary.
well,
I know. It's
it's a
really
fun
scary.
it's a fun background too, because it's something that I discovered after I moved here 35 years ago, which is that we do have a community of spies, retired spies who live here, as well as people who are State Department, people who are defense intelligence, and they have been here probably since the 50s. So a lot of the older ones have died off. And now we're seeing some of the younger generation, their children anyway, who have a few stories to tell about their parents. But it's all based on the fact that, I moved here and my husband, who was a medical doctor, had a medical practice, and he would take occupational histories of some of his patients. And a lot of them were retirees.
Yeah.
And several of them would say, I used to work for the government, but they would not talk about what they did for the
Oh,
government.
they know.
Yeah, it was a real estate agent who told us, oh, they're all CIA. So that was the first germ of the story. I've known about this for 3 decades, but I had not written a book about it until I had to get older. I had to become, their age group to understand what it means to be, especially an older woman, and become invisible. Um, but in a way, that's a very useful thing if you're a spy, and that's where Maggie Bird was born. It's out of knowing that they're here, and also out of my own experiences of being an older woman, and just combining them together. And lo and behold, here the Martini Club got created. I wanted to be part of that group. I wanted to have my own martini club and sit around and drink and gossip and tell stories and talk about the old days. Yeah, I think it'd be a lot of fun to be part of that group.
I didn't pick an age group. Somebody asked me the other day because they can't tell how old I am. Not that I care. They said, "Oh, you look really good. How old are you?" I said, "Older than some and younger than most." And they looked at me. I said, "You heard me. Older than some and younger than most." He couldn't figure it out. He got it wrong. He made me not older but younger. And I said, "Okay, that's good. My hair looks better this way. You can't tell." I can't stand it because people talk to you as if I called a medical office yesterday just to tell the girl that something was being faxed. And she said, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" I said, "No, I'm sorry. I don't have my hearing aid in." So see, I get really annoyed because age means nothing. Intelligence is everything. So
Yeah,
what?
well, unfortunately, we're getting to the age where I would have to say younger than some, but older than most.
That's exactly right. And my nieces and nephews think I'm a genius, so I don't have to worry about that because they think I'm the aunt that knows everything, and that's probably true.
Yeah, well, that has to do with reading books, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know. Too many.
Too many. I mean, every time you pick up a book,
I,
you
I
you can
read
learn something.
I read one about karma the other day that was 600 pages. Oh, yeah, yeah. And now I'm reading one. The guy sent me the true story about Adolf Hitler and
Ooh,
whether he really escaped. It's called Twilight of the Evil. The guy comes from India, and I'm reading this, and it's a true conspiracy story. And I'm not putting it down. It's good, but I'm really taking my time. But now, poor Susan finds herself in the wrong place at the wrong time. What happens
I,
when Susan's in herself in the wrong place? And who is Kit? What's her problem?
Oh, okay. We're getting into spoiler
Whichever one you
territory.
want.
We're getting into spoiler territory because
No, we can't
Susan,
tell them.
we can't talk about what happens to Susan,
No.
or what, we're actually probably at the 2/3 of the way through the story where revelations start to happen. And all I can tell you is look under the roof, look under your own roof to find out what's really going on, because and
Yeah.
also I should mention that, like like the history of the CIA here, there are echoes of it with the Conover family, with their neighbors, with the kind of people who settled in these big homes on Maiden Pond. And what were they doing here? Why did the CIA move them to Maine? And it gets back to that very first scene, and it
Yeah.
gets back to MK Ultra, which does have. I can even tell you which house this was happening in back in the 50s and 60s because it's still there. And I spoke to the adult child of one of the CIA employees who was working on MK Ultra here in the town.
So I'm going to add this one in. How did you pick the cover of this? Is that the house?
Oh yeah, that's all
I
due to
love this
my public.
cover, and the water says it all.
Yes, my publisher actually helped me with you know, I really enjoy being published by Thomas and Mercer. It feels very much like a collaborative process. They helped me come up with a title because I'm always coming up with the titles that nobody likes, and so they all agreed that
Mm.
the Summer Guest was the best, and they came up with the title for my third book, which I'm working on right now. Um, so the Martini Club goes on into a third book. I have finished the first draft, and I'm working on the revisions right now. So it's not the it's you'll be seeing more of Maggie and her friends in book number 3, which will be called The Shadow Friends.
That's amazing because my publisher did not do a good job in my last book, and she didn't get
It's
any reviews.
covers are sometimes they hit it and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
I've had some really bad covers, mainly my foreign publishers. I once had a book called Bloodstream, and the
Mm.
cover was a dead
I
fish.
read that too. This was it's called Voices from Beyond. If you do something wrong, it's a true story. Some of them do something wrong, you wind up as a face in the mirror forever. To
This is your
repent.
book.
Oh, yeah, my book. And
And
I
what was the cover?
wanted the cover. The cover really is great. I could find it on my phone, but it's like she did not do anything to help me get reviews, and I wanted um, pictures of people that were dead in a cemetery, and I don't think she got it. She didn't quite get it. Oh, there I am.
Well, author as an
That's the
author,
cover.
I can't really see it.
I'm gonna see if I can get it bigger. Yeah, yeah. She didn't quite get it.
Yeah. Um, you know, Authors are not necessarily the best people to decide on covers. I don't have a history. I mean, I don't have uh, an arty eye. I
Yeah,
don't have, a background in graphics. So I rely on my publishing team to come up with a
yeah,
striking cover. And covers are funny. There was a time when all the covers were of scared women's faces. It's
yeah.
all it's like a woman in jeopardy. It's always what they would call wimjep, and that got to be old. So I think that they're expanding. A lot of covers nowadays, I think, are much more artistic. They're much more literary. Those are the
Yeah.
covers that I really enjoy. I'll tell you one thing. The things that I don't like on a cover as a reader. If I'm in Barnes and Noble, I'm looking at all the books that are sitting on the table. If it has a gun or a knife on it, I am not interested. There's something about hard weaponry that just makes me, leaves me cold. So I don't look at those. And it's funny because I think that men and women we respond differently to book covers. I'll bet you a man would love to have a cover with a gun on it. But I would rather feel something, that's mildly suspenseful, not violence on the cover.
Well, I don't put an author's picture in ever.
Yeah,
I
you know
try to
what?
avoid this problem. So
Yeah, it would be nice to not have to put. I mean, I have my photo in
we
the
have
on the book.
Colin, and what does he have to do with this? And then what does Elizabeth do?
Okay, well, we're still back to the Conover family.
Yeah, we
Colin
got
is
yeah. What does
Colin
he
is
have to
the
do with anything? And what
yeah.
Elizabeth? Is this going to be another one in this series, right?
There's going to be another one. The Conovers will not appear in the next book, but the Conovers are in this book. So the Conover family back in this house on the pond. We have the
Uh,
matriarch Elizabeth. We have her older son Colin. who is a really wealthy finance guy in
Nice.
Manhattan. He and his wife, equally beautiful, equally handsome, and equally blonde. They have a son named Kit, who's a teenager and who's kind of a strange child, a strange kid. Let's put it that way. Then she has her younger son Ethan with his new wife Susan and their adopted daughter Zoe. So that's the entirety of the Conover family. You have
You,
the very successful older brother Colin, and you have the novelist who's not so successful, Ethan. And there's that sibling rivalry between them. So anyway, you'll people who read the book will feel all the different, I guess, all the undercurrents of conflict within this family.
well, the book that, I really have to say, I read over 50 books this month. I don't know how. And went to my dermatologist last week. He blessed me. So this one goes in the new pile for Dr. M. His wife wants all my books.
Well, good. I'm glad you have a home that they can go to,
Yeah, he
because
loves them.
I don't know how you do it. How fast? I mean, you're such a speed reader. You
Speed
read.
reading. My mother made me. Oh, she was evil. She made me read 10 books a week with homework and everything. And till this day, when I read a book, see, I outline and underline and circle. That's how I remember what the book is about and can ask the questions.
Yeah.
So I did that when I was a kid, and she used to see if I was taking notes on index cards. So when I got my reading masters, it made it really simple because I had all those index cards from when I grew up. But yeah, it's tough. And so the hardest part is when I get a book that I hate,
Uh-huh.
or there's a book that there's not. I haven't read a book that I haven't don't understand. But there was one where the cop was in a sewer, and he asked his wife to help solve the case, and she was nothing. So I said, "This is not credible," and I refused to review the book.
Yeah. So,
And then yeah, and if there are two, well, the last book I read, the author said he didn't want to do the stream because I wouldn't let him use bad language on my stream.
oh,
He
you
had
should be able
fun.
to you should be able to suppress that for at least
I
an
did.
hour.
I said I'm not gonna. I wouldn't review it. I said I won't let him go on. He said I'm not gonna do it. I said he had at least 5,000 f words in the book. At least it didn't need to be there. There was a
No.
plot. It was awful. So, how did you unravel the truth? And what is the carnival leave with kind of a family leave with Susan? I sort of like her. I felt bad for her.
Well, okay, let's talk about how
Yeah,
I do this, because I think a
yeah,
lot of your listeners may be interested, not necessarily in the plot,
yeah.
but how the plot unwinds for me. I'm not a planner. I am very much a pantser. And honestly, as I'm working on the book right now, the Shadow Friends, I am finding that some of the best surprises come while you're writing the story. So as I was writing the summer guests, I have to admit I was not quite sure who did it. I had three or four suspects in mind that could have done it, and it wasn't till the very end when I thought, "Oh my gosh, now I know! I know. First of all, I know who the woman in the pond is,
Uh-huh.
and now I know why she was killed, and now I know why Zoe was abducted. It all ties together, and it has to do with, I suppose, listening to your characters. With the very first book, when I became acquainted with the Martini Club, I learned who they were. I let them talk. I let Maggie tell the story, and it makes it much easier for the second book because they're talking to me again, just as Joe Thibodeau, the local cop, is talking to me again. You see the whole story through their eyes, and if you can really get into their heads and hear their thoughts and hear their voices, that's how the plot unwinds for me. So I don't really want to say too much more about the plot because, again,
No,
by spoiler territory.
they have to read the book. Let me tell you. I very, very rarely, as a matter of fact, this is the first one that I put on Facebook that I was interviewing you on my rest stream. I don't tell anybody
Uh,
because I won't allow anybody to click in while I'm doing my show except the author.
yeah.
Because when I did it on Blog Talk, I mean, there were a lot of people that used to just call in. And then I got rid of the chat room because people were nasty, really
Oh no.
nasty.
Well, you know what? That seems to be the general feeling
Yeah.
now. people are meaner, especially if their
Yeah,
face doesn't show up or their
yeah,
real name doesn't show up. They feel liberated. It feels like the devils have been liberated, and
yeah.
they're playing out on our computer screens now.
This is the best thing that ever happened to me. I never did a face to face until my best friend in the whole world, Peter James, was the top international author in England, found me, and he does Zoom with me. But he said
Huh.
to the I'm like, I was honored. And then he said he's got a new one coming out in August. He sets it up because Queen Camilla reads his books, and that's his friend.
Oh, really?
It's
So why?
like
I have a question for you. Why don't you use Zoom?
he does with Zoom. I have Zoom on here, but I don't like it.
Ah,
He creates it himself, and what I do is I just have to log in and click on the link. Zoom is easy. This is simple. Restream. First of all, what I love, and they know they're listening because they listen to everything I do. Restream has a help desk right on the thing. So if I get mixed up and I can't do something, they immediately there's a thing that right there that says need help. Yesterday I texted them and I said, "Okay, how come the publicist for the last stream, which is really, really, really good, said that something got chopped off at the end? What do I do?" They answered me in 10 seconds.
wow. Okay, so now I
Yeah.
understand. All right, because I don't think Zoom has a help.
It took about takes about 5-10 minutes just to load to schedule a stream. But
Sure.
once it's there, all I had to do is click on Enter Studio, and there's my pain in the neck face. Then I click on the number two, whatever, and the author comes in. It makes it really simple. It's not a Blog Talk was expensive. This is more, but it's worth it.
Okay. Well, thank you for introducing me to Restream. It is new to me, and I'm glad I don't. It doesn't say like some programs will require you to be on Chrome or require you to be on certain browsers
You
before.
could do it for free and try it out, which is what I
Ah,
did.
I see.
And I did a couple of streams just for fun. As a matter of fact, you practice on yourself doing it, and then you could delete it. So what I hope to do at the end, and pray to God I don't mess it up, is after I say that whatever, they told me to wait 15 seconds before I go and end the stream, and then they said that I have to download it. I have to download it, pray it doesn't disappear, and then I download it 5 times so I can send it to you. And then I share it on, if I share it on LinkedIn in about 10 minutes, you're going to get views.
Okay. So
I can't
now
believe it.
I'd like to hear because you read so many books. What are your favorite books in the last month or so?
My favorite books, I love yours. Those are the best, to tell you the truth. And I loved Peter James, the Roy Grace series. I love. Um, Sometimes I get bored with with romance novels.
Yeah.
They get to be like whatever. Um, K. George just wrote When Someone's Out There, and that's kind of like a mystery thriller. It's pretty good. But I've read so many of them that I often wonder how I remember what it is exactly that I read. My favorite, I like Dick Belsky's books. I like the Claire Carlson series. But the one I like really was last week I did with D.P. Lyle Tunica. He's got a brand new series of Kane and Harper, and his Jake Langley series is great. So it's like an author that I like. When I was growing up, I had to read. I read Little Women, Little Men, and I taught sixth grade and got in trouble because I did To Kill a Mockingbird.
So I just do you ever review or talk to nonfiction authors?
I read it, yeah. Once in a while, I do get some nonfiction authors, not a lot, and some of the nonfiction books, like this one I'm reading, Tale of Evil. Some of it is fiction, some of it is nonfiction, and it's scary because yesterday I had to call one of my medical providers, and he actually knew that there was a conspiracy theory that Hitler didn't die; he escaped
Hmm.
for real. And it's interesting, but sometimes I wonder if the nonfiction is really true.
Well, the world is full of conspiracy theories. I mean, I don't. It's you have to. have to weave your way through them and do, and do fact checking. I think
I do.
that's a big minus in today's society is nobody really stops to do fact checking anymore.
If it's a nonfiction book or something like his, I do the research because I won't review the book or interview the author if it's not telling the truth. And I
Yeah.
found that discrepancies in fact, they hate when I do that. But I'm gonna tell them anyway. It doesn't matter. Um, Richard Lloyd Patterson writes good ones. John Joseph Wombar died just recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he writes really great. But there are so many. Let me look on my phone because I do have yours on here. I just posted it right there on my website. And the one that I just read last week is um, the one I interviewed 2 days ago. He's a research scientist. You will know me by my deeds. And that was really is about the Atlanta child murders.
Oh, yeah,
That was one of
that
my favorite books, but they never found out who did it.
that sounds fascinating.
They never
Well,
found out who did it. And the other one is that I did last week is they were on here. Murder Takes a Vacation. It's not out yet. It's not coming out till June. But
mhm.
it's like Mrs. Blossom runs the world and everybody's afraid of her. And they go, listen, it's absolutely it's cute. I have so many that I often wonder how I remember them all.
Well, it's amazing how many. I mean, it's publishing is so much easier than it used to be. There's so many more books to choose from, and we'll never run out of books. That's for sure. And I guess the question is always finding the author that really speaks to us. So in the next at the end, I guess I have to be out in about eight
That's
minutes.
okay. But
I
thank
just
you
want to.
so much.
Yeah.
I hope he's going to do a Rizzoli and Isles novel
I don't know. I don't know because I'm now
because
that
people are
I've
asking me that when I told them you were coming on. That was the first question they asked, and I got you got a lot of fans out there.
well, to be frank, the last Brazilian Isles book did not sell well.
Oh,
Uh,
really? And I read that and I loved it.
yeah, I know. I loved it. I thought they were still going strong, especially but it just didn't. The market was not good for that book, and that was my clue that maybe it was time to pivot and do the story that I was thinking about.
This is going to go far because I got 119 views on DP Lyles this week.
Yeah, well, that's great,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm
So, and
hoping
I will
that
let you know, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much.
Everybody, I'll be back on Monday and Wednesday with a dedication to Princess Diana on the 17th. How to Lead Like Princess Diana. It's a real book. And I'm going to do a special women's history to her on March 17th. But thank you so much. Everybody have a great day. I'm going to wait 2 minutes before the end of the stream and bye. And let's see if this doesn't